Hi. In this particular slide, I want to look at sort of a larger set of assumptions, kind of a macro as opposed to a micro. Um, Start off with the first point here, which is that if we don't match or exceed the rate of environmental change, we die as a business. This is sort of a Darwinian business ecosystem principle. Darwin was the person who said it isn't the most competent creature that survives the long run. It's the species that are most adaptable, and that suggests sort of a reactive. We can't forecast the future, so let's be enormously agile. And then whatever comes along, if we can figure it out, learn, master it fast in the competition, we sort of survive. However, I think that there is a difference between surviving and actually thriving. I've always wanted to be a top 1, 2, 3, 4 percentile performer as opposed to a bottom 90%. So that would suggest rather than just reacting, we would also proact. We'd try to be the first to get some strategic insights and then figure out what to do with those to a certain degree to create a bigger and more sustainable competitive advantage, either from more value provided and or lower cost to do the value than the competition. I think everybody's aware that the pace of change is picking up, certainly with all things digital. Think of how Motorola was a mobile phone king in the 80s, and then they lost out to Nokia in the 90s, who lost out to Apple in the last 5-6 years. Certainly, wherever there's information, it can be digitized. And there used to be a lot of information that flowed from manufacturers through distributors to end markets and end users, and then questions and issues that flowed back from customers to the manufacturers. Well, this is all just in time digitized. So it doesn't mean that we still don't have physical hub economics where products in truckloads, containers has to be broken down and reassorted in smaller assorted quantities to get to a customer on a timely, process basis or whatever. That's sort of an irreplaceable function. But as far as what the people do and how much paperwork can be automated out of the channels, it's picking up. Also, we've looked at in past sections the changes going on in supply chains, where for 24 years now, if you think about 1988 being when the gun went off for Walmart saying we now want to only buy from people that can sell stuff to and through our master distribution centers on a totally automated basis. There's been an ongoing trend to try to eliminate people and paper and flow of product going through channels. I mean, as an example, if distribution reps were if we did the math and we figured out what is it really costing the customer per sales call for the rep to call on the account and put that little sticker on their forehead. So, a guy shows up and the customer says, gee, what's the $357 sticker on your head? Well, that's the cost of my being here, the commissions I get on your business for each call I make on you. But you should be happy because, I'm a great consultant and I deliver $500 or $600 of value to your bottom line. So it's a positive trade-off. I don't think most reps would like to face that issue. But what will happen is the pressures will continue to build. So we have to reinvent ourselves proactively before we have a reactive crisis. Second major point is that in free markets, we continue to innovate to try to make more money because we have incentives to do that. And to innovate, we either give the customer more outputs and or we decrease the cost of creating those value outputs. And there's a whole range of from easy, quickly copied to transformational changes we could try to do. Some examples. For the last 100 years, manufacturers have been saying, well, here is our next generation of items. We have a better hammer. We have a better power tool. It's lighter. It's more durable. The battery lasts longer. It has more speeds. Etc. All the ERs. How do we continually improve what we have? Of course, those get copied very fast. And we've been focusing, for example, on best practices ever since In Search of Excellence came out in 1982-83. Everybody's running around doing benchmarking and trying to figure out how to achieve, more picks per hour, fewer errors per picks, good generic efficiency. But at some point, the life cycle of that vein of opportunity sort of starts to diminish. And most of these best practices aren't strategically focused on any particular set of best customers in a best customer niche, as we learned in the section on nicheonomics. And a lot of these generic best practices aren't co-created higher levels of effectiveness with a strategic customer partner. The next point here is that visionary ideas, where we're not going out to a customer saying, what do you want? And they're telling us, and then we're trying to react, respond, co-create that. We're going out to customers saying, hey, did you ever think about doing something this way? And they'll go, well, no, I didn't. I don't even really know what you're talking about. It's Henry Ford trying to sell a horseless carriage. People don't know what it is. They're asking, well, how many horses are under the hood? They still use the old vocabulary to try to even get their head around what this new thing is that they're looking at. So visionary people look at what's going on and say, well, what's a possible new way of doing things? And they come up with great ideas. Often these ideas are ahead of their time. In other words, it doesn't mean that within the next 10 to 20 years this might not come to pass. It just isn't going to happen for the next 5, 6, 7 for a lot of reasons. So instead of being on the living, viable, economically profitable edge of things, they're literally on the bleeding edge. In other words, they're doing it, but they're losing a lot of money while they do it. We may not want to start off with those kinds of ideas. Because when we go out and pitch these ideas, whether it's to our own internal people or our suppliers or customer partners, most people struggle with something they've never seen or measured or touched and experienced before. And they'll often ask, well, how do you measure what the upside is? How do you prove that? Who else is doing it? Well, no one else is doing it. That's why it's such a great opportunity. And you can't prove what's ever been done, and you can't measure what's never been done. So trying to see the dynamic upside of something is very difficult. Henry Ford said, I don't ask customers what they want in a new improved car. They don't even get cars. All they say is, I want faster horses. So, we have to sort of look at a continuum of fine-tuning the past ideas towards inventing the future kind of ideas. However, I might say that one kind of opportunity of change programs that falls kind of in the middle is to go out and look at a customer's total regimen for doing something. Let's flowchart, how you buy stuff and then how our stuff flows to you and through you and on to the next supply chain step or to your customer. Let us follow the paperwork through, and I've talked about this in previous clips. And what we'll do is we'll come across just gaps. We'll say, well, gee, so you just have a frustration here or a pain point here, or there's a miscommunication. Well, what can we do to fill those gaps? So it isn't anything with the product per se, but it does smooth out the process and make the whole thing more productive. I put down here as an example stud finders. Somebody from Hilti Corporation went out and talked to drywall contractors and said, how do you like our nail gun, and how can we make it better? Well, if you could make it lighter and faster and cheaper and a longer battery, all the ERs, continuous improvement ideas. But one guy went out and said, well, tell me about your day. So, you go get the stuff you need and you got to get on the job. And then how do you do your job? And notice that the contractor is spending 35% of their day just trying to find the beam behind the board and then to try to get the nails in the center of the beam. So hence, well, what if we had a gizmo like a Geiger counter that would help you zero in on where the center of the beam is behind the drywall, and then had a little pencil or some marking thing so you could go down the beam and put a bunch of guiding little points, then you could hit it with the nails. And that would save 35% of their day. They said, God, that'd be fantastic. So Hildy went and found some other corporation that had technology that would allow the stud finder to be made. They outsourced everything, slapped their brand on it, sold through the same distribution channel, and the rest is history. And another category of opportunity, which we're probably not going to think about too much, is total supply chain solutions. So when Walmart invented quick response, it was a total game changer and industry killer. Or when Apple came out with iTunes into iPods, into iPhones, iPads, and so forth, it wiped out a lot of old players and models. Another key little concept of Say's law: if we can come up with a breakthrough solution, it often will create its own new demand. It doesn't just replace what's there, we actually get something more from it. And lastly, 2 points. One is innovation. It's got 3 parts to it. You have to have a unique idea. You have to figure out how to execute it and make a profit doing it. So it's profitable execution or implementation of an idea. It isn't just coming up with an idea. And our goals for this whole section are to dramatically boost our corporate capacity for change management, and even make it a core competency part of our culture. So that's the macro set of assumptions. Thank you.